the GAB Talks by the Independent Press Award. I'm your hostess, Gabby Olzak. Today we'll be chatting with novelist Joseph Howse, author of The Girl in the Water, winner of the Independent Press Award in Literary Fiction. Joseph is an author, computer scientist, photographer, and consultant. His photography has been featured in numerous magazines, webzines, advertising, and research markets in the U.S., Canada, and India. As the president of Numist Media Corporation, Joseph provides mentoring and consulting services with a specialty in computer vision. He's the author of numerous technical books about computer programming and image analysis. The Girl in the Water is Joseph's debut novel. He joins us from a Nova Scotian fishing village where he lives with his 4 cats, surrounded by an orchard of thriving fruit trees. Sounds so peaceful. Congratulations, Joseph, and welcome to the GAB.
Thank you, Gabby. I'm delighted to be here speaking with you today.
Well, it's so nice to have you. So, wow, what a debut novel. Let's take a look at the cover. Gorgeous. So The Girl in the Water is a coming-of-age story set in 1980s Estonia and Ukraine. Why don't you give us a little synopsis and maybe fill us in on what you feel the theme of the story is?
Certainly. The novel centers on the perspective of a Soviet teenager named Nadia, a bookworm, an abstract thinker who one day on a remote beach looks up from her book to see that her friend is drowning. From there, the story proceeds to explore what has gone wrong in the life of this character, the friend Ida, and what some of the surrounding problems in Nadia's own family and her society are.
I'm sorry, Joseph, continue. Go ahead.
A central question in the novel is what does it take to change one person's life, positively or negatively? And a related question, what makes life worth living?
Wow, that's pretty deep. Your main protagonist, Nadia, as you said, is a young girl. She's actually a 16-year-old Soviet girl. And you've said she's a young thinker, abstract thinker, you just said that, who's growing up in an era of end games. Explain what that means.
Right. So in the 1980s, in 1983, when the novel starts, risk of nuclear war is still very much on the mind of people in the Soviet Union. It happens to be the year of the Able Archer exercises, which were a series of nuclear simulations carried out by the U.S. that sparked a fear of nuclear war in the Soviet Union. The Soviet economy and the government's control of the society is weakening. There is an ongoing Soviet war in Afghanistan. And a little later in the novel, in 1986, when the main action of the novel takes place, we have the Chernobyl nuclear disaster, which has an effect on Nadia's family.
You focus on a multi-ethnic group of friends, which I find really interesting, particularly in the area where they're living. Would they have been different, these friends, as people, had they grown up in a less repressed environment?
Perhaps. I think many things about the story are universal. It begins, as I was describing a bit, with a teenage girl, Nadia, and her friend Ida, who makes this kind of cry for help. And that cry for help goes largely unanswered. that's the impetus for the story. And that's something that could happen in any society. The story deals a lot with the problems facing institutionalized people in many senses. People who have been labeled as mad and institutionalized, people who have been conscripted into the institutions of the military, people who have been imprisoned for one reason or another. And every society has its institutions that leave their mark on the lives of individuals. The book explores how people can and do live their own lives in spite of that.
You portray very strong women throughout the book. They range from the young protagonist, Nadia, to her grandmother, who was actually a World War II veteran. So, Joseph, where did you derive your inspiration for these characters? Because I find it interesting that, you know, being around teenagers is no easy feat. And you actually wrote the entire book really around the perspective of Nadia. So how did you come up with these characters? What inspired you?
Well, I find female characters very interesting because so often women are asked and expected to play many, many roles in life, often stopping one abruptly, starting another. I drew some inspiration for the characters from travel in Eastern Europe, some work with people from Eastern Europe, and studying the culture there. As for teenagers, when I was younger, I spent a few years volunteering in youth mental health programs here in Canada. And you know, I think that gave me some valuable insight into young people who were outsiders, young people who had been dealt a very difficult hand, and were likely to face a lot of difficult choices throughout their lives because of that.
Is there a particular character, Joseph, that you relate to?
In some ways, Nadia is a proxy for the author in that we hear some of her thoughts. She is a reader, so she connects some of what she is observing to other books. But there's probably a bit of me in multiple characters. Mm-hmm. There's bound to be a bit of the author in every character.
For sure. You have a very strong theme of family and relationships and friendship in the book. What do you think is the most important relationship in the story? Nadia, you focus on the relationship with her sister. They seem to be very different and following different paths. And then she also has a strong relationship with her grandmother. But which ones do you see as the most important relationships?
Well, the book is really structured to focus on different relationships at different times. It's split up into 4 sections, which you could read a bit like 4 novellas, though they do form a continuous story. Overall, the novel as a whole follows an arc of how Nadia is changed by her friendship with Ida, but her friendship with Nastia, her sister, is also central. Nastia really begins as Nadia's protector, because Nastia is the older sister.
Mhm.
And later there is some role reversal in that, as Nastia gets married, Nastia gets pregnant, and Nadia attempts to help with some of the difficulties that arise in Nastia's young adult life. As you mentioned, the grandmother, Nanelle, is also a central character who brings a longer term historical perspective into the novel, and her relationship with Nadia really helps Nadia grow in terms of trying to get outside herself, trying to put other people first, as Nanelle, the grandmother, is in a traditional sense the most heroic of the characters, the most self-sacrificing in a way.
I have to ask, because I know our listeners are wondering, you're a computer scientist. You have quite an impressive portfolio of technical books. So what inspired you to enter into the fiction genre?
Well, I was actually interested in writing fiction long before I became a computer scientist. So there was a sort of transition from fiction to computer science, and later back. When I was 15, I had an opportunity to go to university and study French and English literature, and a bit of Russian literature in there too. And at that time, absolutely what I wanted to do with my life was write fiction. Later on, I ended up working with my brother, a computer scientist. He died of cancer when he was 27, and I sort of inherited the business and his craft. So that became my livelihood for more than a decade now. And at the start of the pandemic, I decided, well, I'm not traveling for work now. I'm gonna focus on writing fiction again as much as I can. And
yeah, tell us about that process. I know our readers would be interested. It's a really endearing story.
About the writing process?
Yeah, that I understand your parents were really your editors.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah. So at the start of the pandemic, my parents moved down with me to my house here in rural Nova Scotia. I started writing, and on nights and weekends, I would read drafts of chapters to my parents, and from their feedback, kind of figure out how I wanted to tweak what the next part of the story was. Dad had a 40-year career as a newspaper editor. Mom is an artist and formerly an actress. And so there's I think there's definitely some learning from from both sides of,
For sure.
of the family there. Yeah.
And artistic blood in your veins. So share with our listeners, Joseph, the beautiful artwork right behind you that appears on your cover.
Yeah. So Mom did the cover artwork, Janet Howse, and she's a painter, an illustrator, and a textile artist.
Stunning.
We have here a number of the characters portrayed. Ida, the friend, Nadia, the central character, her sister Nastia, Georgi, a policeman, Nastia and Ida's father, Misha, at 2 different ages, the grandmother, the mother, Katia, Johnny, who is another character, a friend of both sisters. And we have in the background the Motherland Monument in Kiev, which is a 20-story high World War II memorial that features an essential scene of the novel.
It's just beautiful.
Yeah.
You need to get a frame for that, Joseph.
Beg your pardon?
You need to get a frame for that.
Indeed, yeah. So it's out of frame because I need to photograph it from time to time, but yeah.
Of course. Well, bravo to Mom. That's really amazing, really gifted. So you reference, you said that you did study some Russian literature, and you reference actually Chekhov, Dostoevsky, Tolstoy. And I've read reviews of the book, and they say that it is, your writing is reminiscent, and I would have to agree. Who has had the greatest influence on you?
When I was in university, French literature was definitely my first love. I have a great admiration for Flaubert, and also for the French modernist poet Baudelaire, who is referenced a few times throughout the novel. I love the Russian classics as well, and some modern Russian literature, such as Sergei Lebedev's Oblivion, which is a multi-generational story that connects to the gulags. And in English literature, I think my thoughts often turn to Shakespeare, which is, probably not surprising for anybody who took an English lit degree. But,
for sure.
Yeah.
Well, you're certainly well read, for sure. So
a mix of drama and poetry and novels.
Yeah, definitely well read. So on a lighter note, you incorporate some very interesting perspectives in the book, not non-human perspectives.
Yeah. So cats feature largely in the book.
Okay, tell us about that.
Sure. The girl's father, Misha, is a bit of a loner, really. He's lonely and a loner, and a lot of the time, his company are stray dogs. And cats. He likes to go out and visit. So the girls develop a love of animals as well. And in the backstory of another character, a neighbor of the grandmother, Yuli, he's a Holocaust survivor, and in his backstory, he lost his family, including a little girl who had a cat. And at one point, Yuli asks the young characters who are moving to Kiev, where his family had died. He asks them whether they can go looking for some evidence of what happened to the little girl and the cat. So there's a sequence in the novel which kind of wanders through landscapes of Kiev and Holocaust sites, and the grandiose scale of the Soviet memorials and the huge scale of loss of life in the Holocaust is kind of contrasted with this perspective of a little girl and her cat who disappeared. So that's and there are other scenes in the book later too where we kind of shift to an animal perspective, a perspective from nature, a perspective from children, and this provides a contrast to kind of the grandiose constructed modern world that is all around the characters.
What is the most important message that you want to evoke with the story?
I think the story certainly portrays that it is possible for one person to help another, for individuals to help one another. You can make a difference in one life. And many of the good things in life that you can share with another person are simple and have nothing to do with ideology, with grand projects of building empires or pyramids or space stations. The good things in life, as so often portrayed in Tolstoy's stories, the good things in life are simple, and that's a core message. Also, the misfits, the people who are portrayed as mad, the people who run away from the duty that is assigned to them. Often the misfits are the ones who are really sane. And I won't say much more about that because there are spoilers in it, but it's something I hope readers will discover in there.
So true. So, Joseph, do you have a life motto that you follow?
Pay attention.
That's a good one. Pay attention.
Yeah.
I like that. Very good.
Yeah, I would say so, because often tragic mistakes, tragic misunderstandings between people arise from just not really watching and listening. It could be a case of an error somebody makes in work that affects another person's life. It could be a case of missing signs that somebody else is sick or unhappy. It could be a case of not paying attention when you're driving. Not paying attention has big costs, and so often the important things are in the details, are in what's small, and human scale or cat scale, as the case may be.
For sure. Well, you are actually, not only is the book independently published, but you are the independent publisher. So what are the challenges with that?
Yeah. Well, I think the biggest challenge is that your time is split between writing and marketing.
Mm-hmm.
In in literary fiction, the audience can be hard to define, and you hope, in fact, that part of the audience isn't born yet. you hope that it has a future readership. So I try to market the novel very widely to reach interested readers somewhere. Lately, I've been focusing on campaigns in New Zealand and one coming up in South Africa. In both places, I've found local publicists and distributors who are really keen on the book. So yeah, spreading yourself thin is the biggest challenge there, and it is a case of switching between different mindsets. I feel that I'm lucky to come to it with some technical skills and business skills, so I can do a lot of things for myself on the side of producing the book and the ebook. Yeah.
Terrific. Well, I'll say it's an incredible debut novel. It really is. What's next, Joseph? Any plans for another novel?
Yeah. I am currently working on a sequel to this novel, which is set 2 years after the conclusion.
Well, that's interesting.
I also have plans to write other books in the series, going back previous generations and forward to the present. So there's a long plan for a series around this, among other books I'd like to write.
Fantastic. We're looking forward to it. So lastly, Joseph, where can our listeners purchase The Girl in the Water and find out more about you and your upcoming projects?
The book's website is nummist.com/stories, nummist.com/stories. You can find a lot of retailers and libraries and subscription services listed there. You can get it on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, bookshop.org, Kobo, Apple, and many other retailers.
Fantastic. Well, we're really looking forward to your upcoming projects. Joseph, it was really a pleasure chatting with you today. Thank you so much for joining us.
Likewise. Thank you so much, Gabby.
Our pleasure. Next time on the GAB Talks, we will meet Todd Wade, author of Cybercrime, Protecting Your Business, Your Family, and Yourself. This is your hostess, Gabby Olzak. Until we meet again, keep on reading.